the last few years, Rebbe just sat, and you can see this is like an avia, like this like a flow, and it's coming from like a very, very deep place, and it's just like, this is it. This is like my essence. I'm pouring myself out there now. I'm not giving you a theory. I'm not giving you another Rambam and a Rashi. None of that.
We're past that.
We're past processes. I'm going to give you what it is. You have to figure it out.
Welcome to Homesick for Lubavitch, a podcast where we explore Lubavitch identity in the year 2024. My name is Bentzi, and I will be your host. Let's begin. Alrighty, I am here with Rabbi Dovber Pinson, who is a shliach, an author, and a well-known speaker as well. I was here a few months ago to film Rabbi Pinson and interview him for a different video project. What was it about? It was about Yutis Kislev, Chag Geula, freedom, and the Hasidic idea of freedom or freedom of the mind. A project that I was doing for Shmuley Hecht at Shabtai in New Haven. And it was a very interesting conversation, and I figured that we'd continue it on the podcast and open it up a little bit and see where it goes. Thank you very much for agreeing to do this, and here we are. So I'm going to try to frame the conversation for those who didn't watch the video and are going to watch the video. We started off then with. We start off discussing, I'm going to come into the conversation from the side, from the point that there was a very interesting point that you made at the time, that I remember now, and maybe we'll work our way back to how the conversation began then, or maybe we won't. We'll see where it goes. We were talking about how all the Rebbeim had sat in jail, besides for the Baal Shem Tov and the Rebbe, right?
Yeah.
Right.
At least that we know. I mean, there's some like indication there was maybe arrested or something.
Right, but that's an apocryphal story. Yeah. It's not part of the canon.
Right, it's not a canonized story,
and certainly not as a Rebbe. That's for sure.
Yeah.
That's not disputable. I mean, the Rebbe became Rebbe in America, by definition, almost it was impossible. And I remember you kind of gave a explanation or a hypothesis of why that might be. It's probably the accurate way of describing it.
It's a hypothesis,
Is hypothesis?
I mean, it's a theory.
Saying, you didn't claim for it to be fact. No. It was more like maybe this is the explanation. Ulai yesh lemar. We'll get to the ulai also. That was another part of the conversation. Okay. But you suggested that it had to do with the Baal Shem Tov and the Rebbe having something similar about their Torah and what their Torah is about, and almost that it would make sense that because of what they represent in the lineage and in the schema of Hasidic thought, that the narrative of imprisonment doesn't fit for them. Am I?
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm just remembering it.
Yeah,
I'd appreciate if you.
If I elaborate on this idea?
If you'd like to.
Sure, yeah, I'm gesundheit. There is, let's say it like this, there's actually two ways of being in this world. There's two ways of being in this world. One is very process-oriented, and one is presence-oriented. So process-oriented means you're starting from point one to point two, and then your journey is moving forward. There's ups and downs, and there's good times, bad times. That's like a journey way of doing things, which is process. And then there's a way of presence, and presence means that you're always in the right place, the right time, right now, which is a different way of living. It's fascinating that the Rebbe once spoke about this. Chayil, I think, Membez. Chayil. Yeah, Chayil. Okay, Chayil Membez. The Rebbe spoke about this. And he spoke about this idea that the Sharblat, like the opening page of the Tanya, is Kikar V'lecha Dov Moed V'fichel B'Achal. So he's saying how a person has to reach B'Lovcha, how it's Kar V'lecha, how there's a process,
Right.
And how it's a derech, a rucha v'ktsara, that you're going to get there, but this is a process. It's very process-oriented. Then the Rebbe said, but if you look at the sharblat, there's no real sharblat there. So if you look at Sivas Rivash, which is like the testimony of the Baal Shem Tov, so even though it's not meduyik like the language, Alter Rebbe writes in Geras HaKodesh, but the ideas are clear. And the first opening, the Rebbe says, the first opening, which is like the sharblat of the book, is Shivisi Hashem L'Negdi Samid, that you have to have the presence of Hashem at all times. And the Baal Shem Tov translates the Shivisi is the idea of Ishtavos. Ishtavos means equanimity. Equanimity means that no matter what's happening in your life, your ups and downs, you're always in a state of presence. On Negdi Samid, you're standing in front of Hashem, and you're in a state of equanimity. So that was a stira. It's a contradiction.
Right.
Because Ishtavos means presence. You're always there. You're always whole. You're always perfect. They're exactly the way you are. The Karvel Hadam Moiz means process.
Right.
So the Rebbe says you could say that the Baal Shem Tov is the Mayim, and it's Nar Yotze that Nar Yotze that it comes out of Gan Eden. It's a Nar that's coming from the Mayim. But he says no. The Rashab writes that the Alter Rebbe's Torah is the Futz Mayin of Secha. It's the Mayin of the Baal Shem. So how is it? It's a contradiction. How can you have the Baal Shem Tov that talks about presence,
right,
and Alter Rebbe talks about process? This is a shaila.
Wait, 1 second.
Yeah.
I trust your translation of the words.
Yeah.
But the Rebbe didn't speak in English, so how did he teach presence, or what did he say?
No, he didn't say the word presence. He said the word shtavos. He said that shtavos means that it's not kikar v'lech. It's not a journey. Right. It's like, and the way they're using language is there's no really difference if it's like you're feeling it, you're not feeling it, you're closer, you're not closer. It's always you're neichach by Hashem. So you're not talking about any types of journey. There's no kikarev means that it's closer to you. It's a derech. There's no derech. In the state of Ishtavos, it's translating, right? In the state of Ishtavos means there's no up and downs. That's what Ishtavos means. Equanimity means that there's no up and downs.
And he touched the Alter Rebbe as being ups and downs?
Yeah. That he said, the way the Rebbe used the language, he says, when a person reads the first Shabbat in Tanya, he has to like gartle his gartle and ready to do the journey.
Interesting.
Like it's a battle.
Interesting.
It's a battle. It's Muhammad, like Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya, right? It's a Muhammad. It's Muhammad between the fashas. So which is very battle oriented. And Baal Shem is no battle.
Right.
You're present. That's it. You're here. What do you mean? What's the difference?
Right.
So this is the question. So first of all, the fact that the Rebbe asked this question is already a big thing. Like it was never asked until the Rebbe. Like the Fidi Rebbe didn't ask the Shaila, the Rebbe didn't ask the Shaila, no one asked the Shaila.
Right.
So this is already. I'm giving it a pirush on this, right?
All right.
Okay. So what was it?
Anyway, we can make a disclaimer now, from now until the end of the podcast.
Yeah, this is all ideas.
Some things will be from
Correct.
what Rebbe says. Some things will be ideas.
Ideas based.
Take everything with a healthy grain of salt.
Yes. So this is the question. This is the Rebbe's question. And the teretz that the Rebbe gave, the answer that the Rebbe said, that, which is a fascinating answer, is that, and again, I'm translating the answer, is that the Alter Rebbe is saying that you have to come from a place of kikar v'lecha, which means the idea of process-oriented spirituality, which is movement and growth, etc., from a place of shivisi.
Right.
From the places, that's the Maya, that you come from the place of presence to the place of process. Now, if you pull this out and you say, what is really what's happening here?
Wait, 1 second. Did the Rebbe explain how?
No, he didn't say how.
But how? But if it's a stira, how do you get from one to the other?
Because I'll explain you. Okay, so let me explain. I mean, they used a lot of different oisias, and they talk about the kubitz and the shurek. They used a lot of different oisias to explain this. But we'll try to translate it. And also, the Rebbe says v'chulu v'chulu a lot of times. So v'chulu v'chulu means you're supposed to add the v'chulu v'chulu, right?
That's a whole different parsha. That's a very interesting parsha.
Because the Rebbe said that. Right?
What does v'chulu mean?
Chulu means ten l'chacham v'yachmoed. Like the Rebbe used to say, like now you figure this out. Like I'm giving you the principles.
That's not how it's touched in yeshiva, but
okay. Okay, but v'chulu, two v'chulus is like it sounds like.
I'm agreeing with you, but I think it's a very interesting. Okay, we'll get back to it.
Okay, so anyways, the point is that there's in Chabad, strict Chabad, and the way Chabad is understood is that it's avoida, and avoida means you're starting off with a premise that you're not perfect, you're not whole. There's something, there's two nefashas, there's two people, there's two real serious things, and the nefesh hasheinish b'yisol, which means you really start off v'hi adam is the nefesh habamis. Who you are is really your nefesh habamis, and you're slowly starting to move to the grech, to get someplace. And it's very, very process. It's avoida. Avoida means it's really hard work. Out of Azay, Zal Moshe, I don't know if you know Zal Moshe. Zal Moshe once said, someone asked him when he was older, wie de grechman? Like, how do you get someplace? Zal Moshe was a big Yid. That brought even Zatzal on him.
Right.
A big, obviously, I don't know if he's a big person. So he said, 20 Jahre is Kafia. 20 Jahre is Hapcha. 20 Jahre is Samachvav. Like, it's 60 years already. 20 Jahre, 20, und noch gar nicht. so I I'm not going to say it was almost to get to that place, but that was the tnua. Is like, because if I'm always getting to someplace, I'm never there. The definition of a journey is that you're never in the destination.
I mean, there's a nice anecdote about Zalmesha that fits that also perfectly. It's also a little bit more colorful and does justice to Zalmesha. I think it was Zalmesha that he on Purim was very, very makbid to hear the Megillah
over and over again.
And because in general with the Megillah you have to hear every vart to be mechaven, and it's impossible to be mechaven. So what did he do? He would listen to it and then he would say l'chaim and listen to it again until he was pasha shikir and couldn't listen to it anymore. He had no choice. It's a similar idea. Sometimes the journey is to the bottom of
you have to get to the end.
To the end.
Till the end. Till you drop.
Till expiration.
Till expiration. That's it. That's the journey. That's the definition of a journey. The definition of a journey is that you never get to some place. Right. If it's a journey, that means you never get to some place. Okay, that's one way. I mean,
that's not the one second. That's not the normal definition of a journey.
No, but if you say life is a journey, right? That means that no matter what level you reach, there's always a level to reach tomorrow. The only way your destination is reached at the end of your life. Because if I'm living today and I say life is a journey, it means I'm continuously journeying.
That's not, again, I don't think that's, I understand that, but I don't think that's normal. I think most people set up a destination that they'd like to reach, which is why you have the concept of retirement and you have the concept of achievement.
But I'm talking about spiritually. Let's say if you say your life is a journey, that it's a derech.
There's also spiritual achievements.
Could you, in other words, let's say according to like the strict definition of Tanya, without Perik Yudal.
Oh, a second, you're going ready to Chassidus. I'm talking about that. I'm just trying to bring out.
No, right. I'm saying, but if you're talking about a journey, a spiritual journey, and I want to get someplace,
right?
Then the value is in the journey itself. That is the value. The value is that every day I'm moving closer and closer and closer, because the moment I get to the destination, if there's like a spiritual epiphany, if I have to get to Eretz Yisrael,
right?
If I get to Eretz Yisrael, then what? That's over. So you don't.
That's a whole different kind of words.
Yeah, no, I know, but I'm saying, but that's the idea. The idea of like the process inherently means that it's always in a processing.
But that's only because Chassidus has set up the destination as Ein Sof.
Correct. I got it. If you want to get to a place, I got it. Then you can get to the place and you're there.
Right.
But if I say that I'm journeying towards the Ein Sof, so then the journey is Ein Sof.
Right, but I think it's important to digress a little bit and unpack it, because the journey to Ein Sof, we've gotten so familiar with that kind of thinking, but there's a reason why normal people, quote unquote, don't undertake these kind of journeys.
Yes, right.
Like if every person decided that I want to go away from Avodas Hashem, you go to, let's say, business, right? If every person says my business journey is to become Jeff Bezos,
right, then
you're going to have a lot of miserable, delusional people out there, because by definition, the majority of people are not as smart as him and are not going to be as lucky as him, right? So there's a reason why most people say I'm going to make a realistic journey, because that gives me increments to judge myself against.
Correct.
Whereas in safe, you never get closer.
Correct. I think in general in life, like in physically, it's healthy to make long-term goals and short-term goals. I think that's the difference. Like I say, a person says, I want to become wealthy. Okay, I want to have $1 million when I'm 25. Whatever the number is. Then I have like the big arching goal. Like one day I want to have, I don't know.
But it's never 100 billion.
I got it. Okay, but there's right.
It's never 100 billion, because if that's how you're setting yourself up, you're virtually setting yourself up for failure. Because the amount of people that are going to get there, it's like saying my goal in life is to win the lottery.
Right,
good luck with that.
Because it's luck. Right.
Good luck with that. I mean, it's like, but this is even worse than luck.
Right.
Because it's fucking not the whole point. It's not shaykh.
Correct. So then the journey is a journey and a journey and a journey, and the Alter Rebbe writes this in Tanya, right? If you're talking about the spiritually, the Alter Rebbe writes that the Beinoni, the Avodas HaBeinoni is the struggle,
right?
And it's also matamim, and that's the beauty of like the unsavory foods.
Right.
And that's like part of the struggle. You're going to struggle, and you're a struggler for the rest of your life. And that's it. Just remember that.
Right.
And you're going to struggle. You're not going to do the grech.
Right.
That's not the point.
But even deeper than that, the way I think, at least, the way Tanya's set up is that the Alter Rebbe doesn't even give the luxury. This goes back to the ulai that we were talking about. The Alter Rebbe never gives a person the luxury of saying, okay, you know what, I'm a Beinoni. I'm going to set up a quote-unquote realistic goal of being a Beinoni, which isn't that realistic in the first place, but let's say it's attainable according to the Alter Rebbe, right? Midas Kol Adam. And that's going to be my journey. And that would be a life worth living, is to become a Beinoni. But the Alter Rebbe doesn't even give you that luxury of like, this is my journey. He says, maybe you should be a tzaddik. Like maybe really your advice is to be a tzaddik. Even though the chances of that being the truth are minuscule. Most people are not. The vast majority of people are not tzaddikim. But even though you're most probably a Beinoni, I'm still going to tell you that maybe you should be a tzaddik.
Right. He tzaddik.
Which kind of is the idea that you're talking about here, that there's always almost in a way like this parallel, but in a way complementing kind of thing.
Correct.
Where there's a infinite part of the journey that is impossible, but that kind of tension of pulling you towards impossible changes what possible is.
Correct.
Right?
Correct. So that is actually a way of going back to like this idea. This is a way, the way the Rebbe, and what he's saying is it's like this idea of ishtavos and process is how there is a possibility for process within a world of ishtavos.
Right.
Like, how do you do that? What's the avoida of a person? Because if the Rebbe is on the one hand is of course the seventh Rebbe of Chabad, so it's process, and there's Maimorim, and it's like a process oriented state. But on the other hand, the Rebbe also talks about a different language that none of the Rebbe besides the Baal Shem Tov talked really, like in an open way, of like this idea of Nas Chilas and B'Soifim. It's clear this idea of like every yid's a tzaddik, and every yid's a Rebbe, and you have to open up Yichud B'Nefesh, and you have to open your eyes, and which is like it's right here, right now. It's not about a long, difficult process to get to a certain place. It's open your eyes. You really have Yichud B'Nefesh. You really have this soul that's infinite, and you just have to open yourself to that. So then what happens with process? Like, so then what happens with all Iskafia and Ishapcha? So this doesn't happen? So there's a different way of looking at it. Like sometimes you think about Iskafia and Ishapcha is, I'm breaking myself to become something. And this is what you said, in another way of saying it. Or I'm breaking myself to show that I'm actually there already. It's very different. So if you talk to a chassid Rebbe Rashab, I'm just giving you again this hypothesis. I talk to Rebbe Rashab's chassid. He's doing Iskafia and Ishapcha, meaning ich bin garnished, and I have this taiva for this orange. That was like a big taiva those days, or an apple, let's say. And you can use a metaphor for any other thing. Right. And I'm saying I'm going to break myself. I'm not going to do this because I'm bigger than it. And by breaking it, I'm becoming bigger.
I'm going to climb the ladder.
Yeah, exactly. So and I'm showing myself, and I can become bigger than this.
Right.
And the Dor Hashvii, or the Malchus, or the Kesser of this is this idea of this immediacy of presence, is that you don't need that. Watch it. You're going to break yourself, and it's going to show you not that I'm becoming bigger. It's showing me that I'm actually not bigger than this. Mm-hmm. How do I know I'm bigger than my taivas? If I can control myself. If I can control myself, it shows me that I'm actually I'm not a person that has taivas. I happen to be also a person that has taivas. But in my nefesh, who I really am, is beyond that.
So in a way, it's a return to the roots of the Baal Shem Tov, of the Pintali.
Correct. With like it's like a shleimus of Chassidus Chassidus. The Rebbe speaks about this in other Maimorim, but not in this context. I'm going to be honest, not in this context at all. About klal l'prata klal. There's a very big theme in the Rebbe that there's a klal. There's a klali, if you want to use this. Then there's pratim, like the details, which is process. And avoida is Maimorim Shvuos. A lot of Maimorim speaks about how you have to take the klal and all the pratim and bring it back to the klal. Klal, prat, then klal. Right. But then the second klal is a klal that has all the pratim. Right. The first klal has all the pratim. It's just it's oir. Right. The Torah Baal Shem Tov is oir. It's pure oir. Right. There's no pratim. There's no process. There's no development. It's not. Here it is. This is the way it is. Comes Chassidus Chabad, and develops from beyond the chutz, develops how we're supposed to live our life in this way. And the Rebbe is the shleimus of this, the completion of this Torah is, okay, now we're going to take the pratim and draw back into the klal. That's going to be the hybrid between Shivisi and Kikar V'Lecha.
Well, that's the idea that Chassidus talks about Seif Ma'aser Machshav Tchila, I think, right? Where, in every creative work, you have the initial concept, and you have. But to take the concept into reality, you need to get involved in a lot of the weeds.
Details, exactly.
What color paint am I going to use? What pigments am I going to use? What canvas?
Correct.
And it gets it gets terrible for any
person.
Correct.
It's very hard. It's complicated.
Because your idea is diminished in many ways. And it feels futile. And I had this wonderful painting I wanted to make, and now I'm worrying about some silly color.
And then eventually,
the goal is to get back to an idea but this time this idea is solid.
It's solid. It's fleshed out. It's real. It's practical. So that's like the there's it says Tzaddikim, right? It says in Svarim that when what a person says, what a tzaddik, especially a nasi, says on the end of their life, is sort of the pure Torah that had to come out.
Right.
So if you look at like the which is unfortunate, this is like the Nun and Aleph, those sichas are like either hijacked by certain people or rejected by other people because no one knows really what to do with this. So it's like one of these unlearned things by serious people. But I think personally, that's actually the deepest Torah of the Rebbe. Like that's where it came out. Where it came out, those types of sichas where it's pure oil. You have to go all the way to the beginning to the Yud and get this.
You were there then?
Yeah, I was there, sure.
So you were a bracha then?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I was very much present there.
What was the feeling then? Because I do want to say that I'm not going to claim that I learned those sichas religiously.
Yeah.
Part of that is because when I was in yeshiva, like you said, I was more with the people that were like made believe like they didn't exist in a way because other people had hijacked them, whatever.
Correct.
But a few months ago, for some reason, for a few weeks, I learned them, and I was like, "Whoa, this is really really interesting things." And it's not all about yichi. Like
no, it's
not all about who's Mashiach, who's Mashiach. That's what I'm saying. I was like, wait a second.
No, by the way, it has nothing to do with that.
Like, who convinced me this?
It's about atzmos. It's about revealing the essence of who you are and being in the state of perfection and redemption and opening your eyes and living in a higher place.
Right.
The Rebbe talks about tzaddikim and every person that's Chadash and Torah. This is like it's a whole nother thing. It's like,
and it's very coherent. It's
super coherent.
It makes like it's not like I shouldn't.
I don't care. I know what you mean.
But people said, it's like I was talking in this language that you don't understand. It's all like Himmeldick, and I'm like, no. Actually, most of it makes sense to me.
Yeah. No, it's
a very different language than other sichas, I suppose.
100%.
But that's me from a distance of 30 years later.
So to be honest, we were Bachrim. I was 19, 20 years old, so it was still Bachrim, which means we were in the thick of things. I can't say we really chapped what was going on, like really what's going on, but there was definitely a sense that this is like the Rebbe sat on my Farbrengen, and it was, I don't want to use this word because it's like a very not holy word, like a stream of consciousness. You can see that there was a stream of consciousness. This was not like a prepared, developed idea. This is like oil.
Why isn't that holy? I mean, isn't that what we say about Maimer?
I agree. But
isn't that what we say about Mamar?
I know, but if you look at the Mamar...
Yeah,
I know, but Shchinim Medaberes can also be a preparation. So there's like a different type of Shchinim Medaberes. So the Shchinim Medaberes, like you say, this is Gesetz Shaila and a real teretz. The last few years, they haven't speak like that. Very, very rarely. They never just sat, and you can see this is like a Neviah, like there's like a flow. And it's coming from like a very, very deep place, and it's just like, this is it. It makes sense out of it. They'll go figure it out. And I remember sometimes
this is what I have to give.
Yeah, this is like my essence. This is I'm pouring myself out there now. I'm not giving you a theory. I'm not giving you another Rambam and a Rashi. None of that anymore.
We're past that.
We're past processes. I'm going to give you what it is. You have to figure it out. And sometimes I remember, because to write it was very difficult. I remember like my Chazara.
You were involved with the Chesed?
It's all my friends. So I was like, that was all. But I remember we were all used to talk about it. It's like, what do you do with this? Like, how do you write it? So this is actually a difference between two different writers. But some of them, I'm not going to say who and who. Some were very much more logical. They try to make it a very logical, sequential thing.
Right.
And some were much more let the oil like shine through.
Right.
And there was actually two. One is
probably
Yiddish,
a difference in Hebrew and Yiddish.
Yeah, exactly. So it was different. So the Yiddish is more like the way it was.
Right.
Hebrew is much more developed. But it was very interesting because you felt that there was something happening. Obviously, everyone thought that that Mashiach is about to But there was definitely a sense that there's a tremendous oil that was there.
So just to bring things
Yeah.
to the circle. So this was the idea that you had suggested last time.
Yeah.
About the Baal Shem Tov and the Rebbe, because they are more presence than process.
Yes.
Presence doesn't open itself to the whole narrative
Correct.
of being imprisoned and leaving
Correct.
prison.
Prison is tension. I'm
Right,
imprisoned and I'm
right,
released from prison. And
right.
that's movement.
It's a whole story. It's
Yeah,
going in, it's going
exactly.
out.
It's a story. It's a narrative, and that's life. Most
Right.
people living in the drama of life and the conflict and the breaking out.
I mean, look, it's a fascinating hypothesis. A lot of it is a lot of it seems very obvious, but to me, instead of like trying to drill down and ask you to prove it to me, I'm
Yeah.
going to accept it here. I'm going to accept
No, you
it
don't
here
have to
as fact.
accept that.
No, but I'm
Yeah.
going to, because
Yeah.
I think in my mind I have more interesting things to
Okay,
ask
fine.
about it.
Okay.
Because I think the question is not so much whether or not the hypothesis is correct. It's more, if it's correct,
Yeah.
what does that mean?
That's the most important question.
What does it mean? Because there are a lot of, to me, just thinking about it now, very radical things that can come out of that. For example,
Yeah.
and I'm probably jumping to the more like radical one, but why not?
Yeah.
I don't want to miss it. You know, there is a sense in Lubavitch, for obvious reasons, that basically Lubavitch, like the story of Lubavitch, was cut off at Gimel Tammuz, right? Like and to put it in simple words, that it's not b'shleimus. Lubavitch is not, or Chabad is not b'shleimus, because Chabad and Chassidus always has a Rebbe, and the Rebbe passed away, and so we're not b'shleimus.
So something's missing.
Yeah, by definition. What you're suggesting is that it is b'shleimus, because what started the Baal Shem Tov, the project, if you look at it as a creative project, and of course we're not talking about just, lahavdil from
Right. A ruchnistic project.
We're talking about, we're not talking about. I'm not trying to turn it into some kind of art inspiration, but like it was certainly a creative project on a very high level, on a very high spiritual level, that started the Baal Shem Tov, took generations to process and to expound upon, and then the Rebbe basically tied it up and said, "Here it is. Here's the final painting. Now go figure it out."
Correct.
Okay, that's b'shleimus.
100% b'shleimus.
Okay, so
but let me ask you a question. How could Chassidus not be b'shleimus? Now, it doesn't mean that people are not pained and they don't miss their. That's not a shayla. We have to remember there's two separate things. I will give you a Toyers of Baal Shem because it's interesting. The Baal Shem talked about Mashiach as something that's right now, like Yichidish B'nefesh. You know the famous story with the Chassid that wanted to go to travel to Eretz Yisrael, and he comes.
Mach Eretz Yisrael.
That's a simple study. But even the Baal Shem said, like, where's the Aron? Is a measure bush? Like the whole idea was like right here. The Rebbe is Mashiach. The Rebbe is the Gilui Kulis. Is Yechida. You're going to live this right now. On the other, so on one hand, you don't. So if it's right now, so why do you have Gaguim? What do you desire for Mashiach? Right? What are you looking for in the future? There's no future. It's right now. So this is something that's very oimik, that it's actually almost paradoxical, but they come together. That shleimus doesn't have to come at the expense of gagoyim. So when you say it's shleimus, we have to remember it is shleimus because everything is a davar shalom. This is shleimus. It can't be that. Besides that, there also can be tremendous gagoyim. Of course, every person, that's certainly people that saw their Rebbe have tremendous gagoyim to be connected to their Rebbe and see their Rebbe physically. But if you want to talk about chassidus, like as an idea, how could it not be shleimus? It was a gilu Torah Mashiach. It came down to this world to affect the world, and it's a full package. It's not even shaykh to say otherwise.
So first of all, I'm not arguing with you. I think there's a number of things that I would point out there. Number one is that there is a way that people. Meaning, you asked me, how could it be that chassidus not b'shleimus? I agree with you conceptually,
right?
But that's not the way people talk.
I understand.
That's not the way people talk. So that's not the way people feel. That's not the way people see things. So, that's, first of all, that's a very to me a very touchy kind of subject where it's like, are you ready to say, or are you really saying that the Rebbe gave all that he had, and he gave his essence, and now we have all that we need? And wait, with we don't need another sikha. We don't need another mimer.
So that's gagoyim. I'm saying these are
What am I
not. It's
saying?
not conflict with it. That person has gagoyim. Of course, a person.
No, but really, what you're saying is that's gagoyim. Meaning that's a natural feeling, but intellectually and logically, it's not true.
That is not true. It's a different truth.
It's a different truth.
Yeah,
it's an emotional truth.
There's different truths.
It's an emotional truth.
Yeah. Let's say not lahavlo. Let's say not lahavlo. Let's say another person. Person lives 120 years. Your parents.
Right.
And then they pass on.
Right.
They reach their shleimus. They reach their tafkid. They reach their tikkun.
They live the full life.
The full life. You complete, and you could say thank God, and you could be grateful for their parents. Doesn't mean you don't miss them. Doesn't mean you don't want to talk to them anymore. Doesn't mean that you wish they're still present here. It doesn't mean there's new issues that come up that you wish they can have a real conversation with them. Two separate things. There's two, we sometimes when we conflate different things together, they become a stira. But when we compartmentalize things, they're not a stira. They could be two separate things. I can feel completely b'shalom, a person that has lived a full life and his parent passes away at 120 years old and they lived a full life, they can say thank you and they can bury their parents with a good heart and still feel an ache of pain. So
yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I think though that a lot of times when people talk about what they miss, they don't just miss what you're talking about, the emotional aspect, or from an emotional place. There is a talk that things were cut off. Mashiach was supposed to come, and he didn't come, and now there is something missing, by definition. Not just that I feel like I miss. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, now you're talking about Mashiach coming. Now,
no, but I'm talking in general.
So this
I'm talking about in general that Lubavitch today is missing something, but not just missing that, on top of what we have, we also want that, but that we're pashat missing. And so before we get to how you could have the two things in tension, I think the first question is, is it okay, or is it how do we think about, when you have yeshivas and you have people growing up and thinking about these things, there is a kind of predominant sense that we are a der yasim, for example. Der yasim is more than saying that and thinking that is not just gaguim. It's a sense of being incomplete.
There's a chesser, and I think, by the way, that's a chesar. That itself is a chesar. Because I think for I don't want to say this as a big statement, but I think a lot of times mashpiyim today, certainly certain mashpiyim, are storytellers. Which they do is they sit around Baal Shem and they tell them stories that happened in the past.
Right. Now,
for me, I love it. Personally, I love it. Why? Because I was there. So you remind me.
You love Zecharnis.
I'm like the Rebbe. I appreciate Zecharnis. I don't love Zecharnis. The Rebbe never talked about Zecharnis. I'm not a nostalgic type of person.
Okay.
Because you have to live in the now. Because my Rebbe is the Rebbe. The Rebbe never talked about the past. A few little tiny little anecdotes about his past. Because the Rebbe is a person that's living right now. Because that's presence, right? That's. So I don't. But sometimes when this person reminds me, oh, you remember this? It's like a nice memory. But I wouldn't sit and spend time in this. That's not my thing. But I feel like sometimes it's a tremendous travesty you're doing. You're having 20-year-old bacher and talking about Chavzayin and Lam Tes and this. But they weren't there.
What about Pidal?
Yeah. Exactly. So you're basically telling me this chassidus,
right?
And this is oil that came down, and you missed the boat.
Exactly.
And that's a terrible way to educate people, because what are you doing to them? You're actually telling them, and you're not even telling them that if you do something, you're going to get it. There's no way to get it. It's the past. So what you're creating is a generation that people feel like they're gypped.
Yeah.
But why should you feel gypped? I'm not saying you shouldn't have the gagoyim. You can watch the videos and everything, gewaldig. But you should give a sense to Bachram today, Lubavitch, that you have chassidus.
Right.
The chassidus is a wrapped package, and it's the shleimus of oil. And you can be your highest potential, physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, all the levels, by just living this life.
Right.
And you could be happy and joyful and passionate and alive and present with all these things. And stop talking about the beginning. I get it. I also read the hair. I like these things. I have a geschmack in this because a lot of them is actually it's nostalgic.
Right.
But that's not where it's at. That's not the emes. The emes of now is now. Talk about the Rebbe. Every time the Rebbe, this is fascinating. If you look at, this is less mandapolig. If you look at all the Fabrings, that Rebbe talks about Yud Beis Tammuz, Chai, all these big events, the Rebbe talks about it now.
Right.
I remember. I just heard.
Not. I wish we were back.
No, and he never even talks about the past. It says the Yud Beis Tammuz height was made this height. What was made this height? This is you're celebrating a thing that happened 100 years ago. No, you're celebrating now Yud Beis Tammuz because of this effect, and this is what it means. Yud Beis Tammuz. Everything is about right now.
Right.
And how do you live right now in the highest shlemustic way? So stop bubbling about the past.
Right.
Stop this reminiscing about the past.
Yeah, I mean the psychological. I don't want to dwell on this too much because I've spoken about it in other episodes, and I also don't want it to. But I think I do feel a need to point it out again, like the psychological damage of telling people that they miss the boat. And that they live at odds with time itself.
Correct. That's the most devastating thing.
Because time is like one things in the world that you can't fight.
Correct. So what are you telling them?
You got no grip on it.
No,
and
there's no way out.
And
so
you're supposed to cry about the fact that you were born late, and it's like, do you know what you're telling?
But this is Hepech. I don't know. You believe in Ashkacha Pratis. You believe in Toys of Baal Shem. I mean, we believe in these things. No, we can't speak at two sides of the mouth.
So you end up having people who are upset at the Eibishter for putting them in this time,
but that's
and
not
but the cognitive dissonance that it does to your brain, and you the amount of pretzels you tie yourself up into to justify these things.
So forget about the negative, which is this. So let's talk about Chassidus. Let's talk about what is right now, and inspire people in this present moment.
I don't mean to dwell on this.
No, I'm saying, but that's what Chassidus has to be. It has to be an alive, living, present thing.
Absolutely.
Just like the Rebbe was a live, living, present thing. And the moment you live in nostalgia, you're actually saying that the Rebbe Gimel Tammuz actually happened in a real way. Because if you say that a tzaddik, even B'sas Mikra Chaim, means that the living presence of the Rebbe is present in Tavshin Pei Dalet.
Right.
And if you say that it's a Tavshin and you're reminiscing about Tavshin Lamed Tes, then you mean that the Rebbe passed away on Gimel Tammuz. When you say that tzaddik is alive, it means it's alive. It's present. It's now.
I mean, it's something interesting. It could be completely off, and it could be a grobazach, whatever. Yeah. I mean, the comments will judge me, but I was thinking about it the other week. Like, when does Chassidus end? When does Chassidus get to the end of its rope? By the end of the last Rebbe or the end of the last Chassid? And okay, that could sound like I'm just being a smart aleck, but like obviously the answer is the end of the last chassid, right? It's when the last chassid is gone that chassidus is over, right? Because as long as there's a chassid of the Rebbe, right? As long as there's a chassid of chassidus, it's still there. But you could go even deeper, and I think in a more serious way, and say every Rebbe started off first as a chassid. Like, what's the core of chassidus? What's the core? What's the actual hot nucleus of Chassidus? Like the Alter Rebbe, when he was appointed by his friends to be I forget what the word was, but to be the continuation of the Talmid of the Maggid Mezrich, he still appointed himself. He made a Rebbe for himself. That was
Mendel
Vitebsker. Why? Because you have to be a Chassid, and I don't know if you saw it anywhere else. I don't know if this has to do with this idea of Hishtavos and of presence, but I don't know if there was any other Rebbe where you saw his level of being a chassid as much as you saw it by the Rebbe. Yeah,
that's a whole big thing that you're talking about. But yeah, I happen to agree with you, of course, because the Rebbe's let's go on a high super level to maybe understand. The Rebbe's represents Malchus, which is. And on one hand, Malchus is less than Megarei Klum, doesn't have anything on its own.
Right.
Other thing, it's reflecting everything else.
Right.
So this is the ultimate. I mean, you can talk about the Rebbe for today to next year, and not even understand even Hashem Menayo. But they used to say, I think Zal Moshe said that a Chassid versteht in the Rebbe, wie a Katz versteht in the Levana. So it's and I heard from Rabbi that it's why dafka a Katz in the Levana because if you look at the Levana, at least you know it's a Levana, but a cat doesn't even know what it's looking at. So okay, with all that having said that where are we holding over? I forgot what I was my train of thought.
that there was
chassid. That idea of there's a fascinating article by Zevin in Sfarim Sofer. He wrote this I think tough to Zion, and he writes about different Sfarim, and then he writes about Likutei Sichos. And it's a really fascinating piece because this is a very early 1950s. He writes that the Rebbe in the Sikhs always says, I'm quoting everybody. That's my that's not me. The Rebbe said this, the Rebbe said, the Rebbe said that.
Right.
Everything he says in a new way.
Right.
He's saying everything old, everything to repeat, but it's in a different way. Which is that there's yeah, exactly. So the point is that the Rebbe is the ultimate Chassid Rebbe.
Right.
In other words, the ultimate receiver of the previous generations and the reflection of that, and the ultimate mashpia of that. And this is like a very paradoxical, if you wish, type of oir, which holds those two spaces. But the Rebbe also was a tremendous reflection to other people. Did the same thing. That the Rebbe, when I just heard this recently, someone told me that that there was, I think it was a Zush of Lamowski and Beis and Dalet by Akafas walked over to the Rebbe and said, the Rebbe is on his Galver. So the Rebbe told him, Om and Gamata. And he was like, well, Om and Gamata, what does that mean? What's for me? So the Rebbe says, you also have, koiches that you're not, in other words, so there's the layers. The story is very layered because what it is that the Rebbe is saying is when you tell the Rebbe he's Mashiach, what is he thinking? He's thinking that what the person is saying is like bring out who you truly are, like bring out. And the Rebbe is saying it's true. Okay, I want to do that. Right, I'm accepting what I'm doing, but I'm reflecting it back to you. So you do this as well. Right, like you be your ultimate self. Right. So this is like a type of like an anti-Rebbe, like almost like it's like the way, the classical way we think of a Rebbe and a Chassid. Not, I don't want to say Chabad, but this is like the general thing is the Rebbe is on the pedestal and the Chassid is this this little guy that's. But by the Rebbe,
they have a virtue like the Schwanz Chassid.
Yeah, there's something like that, right? And that was and the Alter Rebbe, the entire Chassid about was very much that the Chassid is or like they used to say Chassid Shtik Rebbe. What does it mean? It's like you're supposed to.
They did say that a Chassid Shtik Rebbe
by Chabad, but
the Chabad said that about themselves.
Yeah,
others said about Chabad.
By Chabad Chassidim used to say that Chassid is a Shtik Rebbe. Pshat is that you're supposed to reflect that greatness. You're not just accept that greatness. You say, okay, so the Rebbe is great, so I'm great. Like that's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to evoke the greatness within you.
Not just by riding the coattails.
Yeah, no, exactly. The forget because that's pointless.
I'm saying not like my Rebbe is bigger than your Rebbe.
No, that's color war. That's color war.
Yeah.
So there's another city of color war. Yeah,
no,
it's forget. It's like my Rebbe is big and therefore I'm big and everyone's big. The Rebbe is a Rebbe Kali Soul. So the Rebbe wanted. The Rebbe said, okay, I'm going to live my greatness. So okay, let's all do this. Let's do it. Let's do it together.
Right. I mean, you think about it. If the Rebbe is talking his emes, then how could it be that you have a different emes?
Correct.
Pasha doesn't make sense.
Correct.
Right. Unless. I mean, I'm sure there's a hasbara of what the other side of the coin is. Like, why did the Rebbeim of Chagas think differently? I'm sure they had
there's another svar. Yeah.
I'm sure they had a reasonable opinion. Maybe there's an idea that certain part of emes is pasha not shaykh to others, and they can only have it through iskash tzaddik or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it could be.
It could be there's something like that, but it seems like the idea here is like so many other things in Chassidus Chabad. It's you take the idea and you take it to its radical conclusion, right? If this is emes, then it's by definition emes umatum.
Yeah,
emes is not limited to right.
Correct.
And but the reason I made that point before about like what's the center of the is that I mean, and I'm thinking even more.
Yeah.
Like when Yud Shvat happened and the Fidikar passed away and they were for almost a year, I think if we're going to be serious people, we're going to say they were seriously refusing to do it. I don't think there was a game going on over here. Okay. I mean, the one hill I'll die on is that Rebbe was not a cynical person, right? He was very, very.
It was real.
No, but it was a very like there was never a game ever. It was always very, very straight. Right. So it doesn't make sense to me that I'm trying to wait for someone to tell me and that's going to convince me. And like sometimes you read these yomanim and like, oh, this guy said this.
Right, and that's what happened.
And I was convinced by some cute line. I don't buy it personally.
Right.
So the Rebbe said he didn't want to become the Rebbe, right? What is that? Wait, he was content, or he was maybe not the word content, but he was prepared that basically what happened after Gimel Tammuz would happen after Yud Shvat. There would be no sitting Rebbe of Lubavitch, and he would go on with his life as a chassid of Lubavitch, I imagine, and of his father-in-law, right? Like, how's that even a thing? Like, we have to, like, Gemara, the Gemara, you have to take the Kosata Daitav seriously. I'm not.
No, but the terrace is Gimel Tammuz. In other words, the Rebbe did it. In other words, when you're saying about what Yud Shvat, this is a very interesting thing, because when you're saying what happened Yud Shvat, and the Rebbe didn't, because when the Rebbe became Rebbe, when he finally decided he wanted to become Rebbe, he became Rebbe with the same hanacha of not becoming a Rebbe.
That's what I'm getting at.
You understand? Exactly. In other words, it's the same hanacha. It didn't change. The hanacha is a Nishkan Rebbe. I'm not the Rebbe, but I am a Rebbe, and therefore, it's the anti-Rebbe.
Right. No, like you could even say that the Rebbe became Rebbe to show everyone what it means to be a chassid of a Rebbe who's passed away.
Correct. Same idea.
Almost like
correct.
That.
Yes.
And it's correct. I'm not even making. The Rebbe said this all the time.
Correct. It's Yud Shvat was a precursor for what happened in Gimel Tammuz. It's the exact same thing. Right. The fact that they didn't want to make it Rebbe is showing that you can be a chassid, a full chassid. For the Rebbe, the Fidik Rebbe was alive. It wasn't like a nostalgic story that happened 50 years. The Rebbe talked about 30 years later, 40 years later, as if the Fidik Rebbe was in the room.
Right.
So this is a living thing. You could do it.
Right. And it's such a travesty. Okay, I'm speaking to sound negative, but I think it's important to point out, because when I was in Yeshiva, there was always these people. No, when the Rebbe's talking to the Fidik Rebbe being alive, he's really being Meramis himself.
Yeah, right.
Cut it out.
Right.
Maybe maybe you know the drushim.
Yeah, he never won't say that on himself. But
there's also pshat. There's also pshat. When there was talking, he's talking in the language to be understood on at least also on a pshat level.
Correct.
Maybe I'm sure there's other levels too.
Correct.
And so there was saying that the Fidik Rebbe is here, and that therefore we're all chassidim of the Fidik Rebbe. He means it because that for him is his truth.
100%.
Now you could be a chassid of this Rebbe who's a chassid of the Rebbe, but really that's every
chassid is a chassid.
The Rebbe was a chassid of the Fidik Rebbe, who was a chassid of his father. So I think once you bring it back that way, it's no longer a hypothesis. That's what the Rebbe was saying all along.
100%.
It's understandable why, and this is where I think we come back to the next question about the tension, because I can understand why people would say, I see where you're going. It's a dangerous place you're going. This is not the right way to go. Why? Because you are going to a very comfortable place. I'm not saying that's what you think. I'm saying, so you moved on. You're okay with being Pascal Thomas.
It's the opposite of moved on.
I'm just saying, I can see why people would say,
I got it.
You're basically, you've moved on, and now you're justifying post hoc, I don't want to live this, begagoyim and bitter and angry or upset about living in this time. You don't want to live that way. It's uncomfortable for you. So you've concocted this whole theory post hoc to deal with your cognitive dissonance, to untie your cognitive dissonance. And maybe I could see, and like there is always that chash that when something makes too much sense, it's close to hefkeres.
Okay.
Yes, I think.
Okay.
But I think when you say, look, wait a second, the Rebbe spoke this way. So then the next question is, how do you make sure not to get too comfortable with it? And I think I'm going to remember just mention one anecdote going to something that you mentioned earlier, and then we'll continue from there. Is that I heard that Zalman Sarabransky, who lived in Australia, came back to Australia after Yud Shvat, I think, and he told, I don't know which other chassidim were there, Kluvgant maybe, only a couple. Yeah, he told them that he had met the Ramash at the time. So this is between the two Yud Shvats, and he told them, this is what I heard. I think I heard it from Asher Farkash, who was in Australia as a shliach before Reb Zalman passed away. I think so. I think that's the provenance here. But he said the Rebbe was a tzubrachene freilich yid.
That's excellent.
Right, and so that kind of ties back to how we've discussed up to this point, where the Rebbe was a prototype of a chassid that manages to live after Yud Shvat with both tremendous gagoyim and tremendous simcha.
Correct.
Okay, how do we do that?
because I got it. So how do you do this? I think every person has to figure out for themselves which part is leaning. There has to be a balance, right? So which side are you leaning? Some people are leaning with a very, I'm present, and the Rebbe's alive, and there's oil, and there's chassidus, and I have no gagoyim. I'm fine. That person has to work on his gagoyim part. You have to watch some more videos, and try to remember. Great deal.
You're too comfortable.
You're too comfortable. It's not moving. It's also if you're a person that's living mamish with gagoyim, and you're always with sipurim and maisalach, and that happened in the past, then you have to start living with the oil that's present right now. I think you have to be in the middle space between tremendous gagoyim and tremendous presence and tremendous simcha. Like this is a good analogy. Tremendous brachenkeit. If you talk about this on a very super level, this is with Mashiach. I mean, if you talk about forget about the whole conversation of Chassidus and Rebbe. But if you talk about Mashiach, and you're talking about Mashiach is Chiddush Benefesh. On one hand, Mashiach means I'm revealing the Chiddush Benefesh and Benafshi. On the other hand, you say I'm Chakal B'chol Yom She'yaved. Right. So what is it? But I'm Mashiach, and the Mashiach Glu Pratis. So this is the content. This is the paradox that we have to live with these two things. And I think if we're pulled in one direction, there have to be pulled in the other direction. You pull in the other direction. You have to figure out a balance where we're in that space where we're not getting too comfortable. Or we're not getting too nostalgic, that we're alive and our kids are happy and our families are happy and our home is saturated with joy and simcha and chassidus and Rebbe, and it feels good. There's no lachats and there's no anxieties. And then we're with that in that way that we can create it in a healthy balance.
Sounds great.
Yes.
It sounds great. I'm trying, I don't want to be devil's advocate here. I mean, sometimes, and this in general is a little bit like, sometimes like, you learn a Maimer of the Rebbe or Sikha the Rebbe, and like the Hadracha is so simple that it's like, wait, it can't be that simple. It can't be that pashut, right? And almost like, there needs to be something a little bit, like you said, the more the process and like the gribbelinzach a little bit. And sometimes, it's just that simple. The truth is sometimes simple, right? What do they say, that to tell the truth, you don't need to... You don't need to have a good memory to tell the truth. You need a good memory to tell the lies, right? Something like that. Yeah. But it's just, I think what, and maybe here I'm steel manning the other side, is that when the goal is happiness, or the goal is like for things to kind of make sense, or like you talked earlier, the presence of, everything just kind of is what is what's supposed to be, or maybe the word would be being as opposed to becoming. Yeah. Right. And so you're kind of almost at this ultimate state. It's very easy. I would just put it simply. It's an unprecedented way of being in Darkei Chassidus. Right, and so that doesn't mean that what you're saying is incorrect. What that means is that I think a lot of times people are like, wait a second, Zalman Moshe, if he saw me acting this way and he didn't know, like he wasn't around to
get the whole picture,
he would pull his pants down on me. There's no shayla. There's no shayla.
That's b'chal. You pull it past on you. I'm saying, but even if you're doing a scafe, I just want to say,
you know what I mean?
No, I absolutely do know what you mean.
He would say, you figured it out.
Right.
We had to spend 60 years, Harvin, and you are.
So first of all, like I said before, I'm not saying you shouldn't do a scafe and a sape. Remember, this is the conversation. A person has to work and has to be an oivid Hashem. I'm not saying that. You have to harava. It's the holding these two things together, which is really the complicated part. Which is you're harving from a place of fullness. You're becoming from a place of being, but you're harving. Because like you said, sometimes in a place of being is okay, everything's good, I'm shlemos, I'm shalom, I'm full, I'm all, I don't need to do anything. But no, you need the harvan, you need the process, you need the chabad, you need the whole thing. That's the shlemos. Now you're asking, how did it come about? So the answer to me is, the very simple answer is that it's the Rebbe. In other words, when there's a nasi, and a tzaddik comes onto in this world, they open up new passageways of being. That's the Rebbe is not teaching another knech. It's not another ktsas or netzivis. It's not another pshat in the Gemara and a Tosfos. Right. That's not what the Rebbe is. Like, the Rebbe could say another pshat in the Tosfos, but it's not the Rebbe. The Rebbe is a gilui of a new or that comes down to this world. So the new or that came down to this world, and Tashin Yud already starts and Yud Aleph in but the new oil that was revealed into this world is a new way that was, it's a psichsatir sinner for a new derech. So it's not true, it's a new thing. So if you say, this is also, this is what, it's like the oimik pshat, like on one level, the Rebbe is, I'm going to say something like this, that you can say this about certain Rebbe, I don't want to get like the proteus, but like Moshe, the Alter Rebbe is a Talmud of the Maggid, a Talmud of Menel Vitebsker, a Talmud of Baal Shem, but the Alter Rebbe in Inyan is also, he's a standalone.
Yeah.
The Alter Rebbe doesn't have
there's no Shaila, he wrote Sfarim that no other Rebbe wrote.
Correct. In other words, he's a standalone person, which means it's a new Gilui. The Rebbe, even though he's into Shalas Chabad, of course, and he's continuing to Shalas Chabad, it's not a Shaila, and on one hand, but he's also an Inyan Lefnei Atzmai. The Rebbe is the Rebbe of Chabad and the Rebbe of the world. The Rebbe is a Nasi of the generation, which means that the Rebbe gave a new possibility to the world for people to act. A new type of avodah. You're right, Zalmesha would not understand it because he was not connected to this oil. And even older Chassidim didn't chap it. And this is, I think, people are just starting to understand it, just like the Baal Shem. When the Baal Shem came in and Pasach HaSatzina, a new oil came in this world, most people didn't chap what the Baal Shem Tov is. They didn't understand what he was talking about.
Yeah.
99% of even the Baal Shem had 5-6 people that knew what he was saying. You know,
and even they took their whole lifetime to figure out what he was saying.
Correct. The same thing also there. The Rebbe is there's a new Gilui Or that came into this world. Now we're the recipients. That's what we're saying. It's the biggest gift. It's not like you don't think Gagoyim, you have it. This Or causes a new type of avoida, a new type of posture. You know,
it's a real thing. What you're saying, what you're saying is that this is a real thing. It's not another Torah.
No, it's not another knetch. No,
like,
it's a psichas. It's a new way. I want to say another word.
Sure.
In it used to be talking about older Chassidim. If you want to say that person's like a Dahoib Nayid, you say this person's Oived Hashem, right? Zalmesha's cave says Oived Hashem. It's like this is like a thing to be an Oived Hashem. And Oivdim, that's what a Talmud that was an Oivd, that was considered the Hubin Bacher. The Rebbe changed the word from Oivd to shliach. And I don't mean dafke shluchim, particular shluchim, but the Rebbe said every Yid is shliach, right? So the word shliach. Now what's a chilik in Eved and shliach? An Eved, a shliach cannot be an Eved. Right. Can't make an Eved a shliach. Right. An Eved is someone doesn't have mitzvah l'fnei
Yeah. What's the lashon gemara? Yadik
yadar rabbi. Yeah. Exactly. There's no mitzvah of an Eved. Eved doesn't have mitzvahs.
Right. It's just an pure extension. Yeah.
Exactly. There's no mitzvahs. You're not
There's no proxy.
A shliach is paradoxical because a shliach on one hand is mitzvah l'fnei It's mat and breibris. Has to be a gestalter person. Has to be a gadol. Has to be a person that's breibris. And yet shliach hom k'moisei. Right. Which means it's paradoxical. Which means I need you to be fully you. Right. And if you're fully me, you can connect to fully me. I don't need to be less you. I need to be you more fully you. And this type of way of being, like we said before, like a chassid and a Rebbe, this type of way of being is a new gili. It's a new revelation. It's a new psichas hatzinner. It's not another knetch. It's not another pshat. It's not another wrinkle in the Torah. It's a new gili that came out of this world, and it's going to take many years. And I think now it's starting to like people to understand a little bit of the conversation. Right. You have to unlearn everything you learned. Right. Just like with the Baal Shem. You know, the Baal Shem had a son. Had a daughter, Odel.
The Baal Shem had
Baal Shem's daughter was called Odel. Okay. Odel. And the Baal Shem's daughter needed a shidduch. So the Baal Shem went to the Beis Medrash and he said, "Who's the best bacher?" They told him this guy, the Deichel. They called him the Deichel. He was like the German boy. And he came over to this bacher and told him, "Bacher, no, what are you learning?" He says, "Meh." He says, "Yeah, you know, pshat and kenish." He said, "What did the Rosh Hashanah?" I said, "You're my son-in-law." Why? Because the person says, "I don't know."
Blank slate.
He's ready to receive. A guy's coming with it. We have all these preconditions. We know exactly what everything means, and now we're trying to understand what the Rebbe said. It's not going to work.
Samrav Zera.
It's exactly. You need to forget everything you know. That's why sometimes it's good for the new generation. New generation doesn't come from all this thing.
Psychodrama.
Yes, I have all this other stuff. I don't want to get into that. They're going to be able to read these things. What do you guys don't know what you're talking about? You know, you're trying to filter information from through an old paradigm, and you're trying to stick it in. It's like trying to stick a floppy disk into a computer today. It doesn't work. Yeah, it's a new disk. It's a new oil, new revelation, new Torah. Torah Chadashim. It's a new Torah. It's a new revelation in Torah.
Yeah, it's very, very, very interesting what you said about the shliach and the chassid. before
Yeah.
I respond to that,
Yeah.
there's another thing I wanted just to respond to, because this thing that you're talking about Pasach Chatzir in a very real way, it's reminding me of something that I think is in quite a few Mamarim of the Rebbe, the story with the with the Beis Yosef,
Yeah.
where he was harving on a shayla, couldn't find an answer, and then
Yeah.
it came to him because
Yeah,
someone
yeah.
else had figured it out.
Yeah,
Was that?
yeah.
And he was all upset.
Was upset.
No. Someone else figured out the
The
answer
beside-
before
for the
him,
Beis Yosef, he asked the
and
Razil.
he was all depressed that someone else would figure out this question that he was working on,
Right.
and he was told by
the
the that no, the reason that person understood it is because you worked on it.
Correct.
And if you think about it, that's not a vart. That's a story that happened.
Exactly. It's not a vort. This is emes. This is the way it works.
No, but it's fact. Like, it's a reality. It's a story that happened.
Yes.
Like, the understanding is that we live in a world of it's a dynamic space, right? And so things that are available to you today were lav dafka available to you yesterday.
Correct.
Even in the world of emes, even
Correct.
what is true,
Correct.
there's still things.
There's higher levels of Gilul Likus.
Right.
No
So
question.
right. So it's not a vart. It's a real thing that, and I think another thing to point out also is that, look, I think the Rebbe was the only Rebbe besides the Baal Shem Tov, and maybe the Maggid also, and the Alter Rebbe. So after the Alter Rebbe, the first of the only other Chabad Rebbe to not be a direct descendant of the previous Rebbe or two Rebbeim above him, right? That the Mafreya, you could say that everything was always clear. The Rebbe Shaban sent the letters to Rebbe Levi, clear that it was going to happen. First of all, I don't understand these things. I don't claim to understand these things, but the fact is that there was a hefsek after Yud Shvat. There was a hefsek, and there was a shaila of what's going to be, because what had happened until then, where there was always a heir apparent, was not there. And so instead of looking at that as something that you have to either fight about, and who was the chassid who was makabel right away, I think there's something very powerful there. It's not, to me, I don't see it as a chasar.
Absolutely not. That is the word of the Rebbe.
It's a
knech in the Rebbe.
It's a new tkufa.
Exactly.
And the way you described how Zalman Moshe would not understand it, because he wasn't there for that kind of hefsek, that moment of what would be the word, that rupture.
Yeah.
He wasn't there. He would not understand it. And in many ways, that's a tension that you could see Lubavitch has been wrestling with for decades, where the older Chassidim didn't understand the younger Chassidim,
100%.
And then people trying to fit a square peg into a round hole.
Correct. This is the big machlokes between Chabad culture and the Rebbe. This is really
right.
What happened after Gimel Tammuz. I don't want to talk negative because it's not the point. But what happened after Gimel Tammuz?
You'll leave that to me.
Yeah. No, what happened after Gimel Tammuz? The Shem Tovs. No, what happened after Gimel Tammuz?
The Shem Tovs just with me.
Okay. What happened after Gimel Tammuz is that no, I have nothing against the Shem Tovs on this.
It's me.
Yeah,
it's fine.
Yeah, you. What happened after Gimel Tammuz?
You're saying the tension between the Chabad culture and the Rebbe.
Oh yeah, I'm saying what happened is after the Rebbe started after Gimel Tammuz, a lot of people reverted back to Chabad culture, which is like the Rebbe. So we're going to drink mashke and eat herring with our fingers. I'm not against. I'm for. I'm not saying it. But that tnua is because the Rebbe was such a new chiddush.
Yeah.
That it was such a consistent but also different, like a chiddush but also nuanced continuation, but also nuanced in such a different way that a lot of people that actually didn't make sense. Like, how do you fit eating herring with your hands is not Rebbe culture.
Right
now, is it positive? I'm not talking about that type of the malchustik. The Rebbe wanted people to walk around like kings and princesses, with beautifully dressed and beautifully presented, and not megushim. I'm not talking about megushim, but this and for early Chassidim faket, the more I don't want to say grotesque,
Soviet and
the more Tashkenti.
More mud on your shoes are better.
Chaim Shaul Brook, the original Chaim Shaul Brook, when Fischl Sneerson used to come to Fabring, he always came. Fischl Sneerson, I mean, this, the guy who wrote Chaim Gravitz or whatever, like he was a professor. That's tremendous, and he used to come to this Kiskel because it's a chassid, it's come to Fabring, and Chaim Shaul used to Fabring. Chaim Shal was really irked by this guy because he wore cufflinks and he was like bow ties and everything. So Chaim Shal used to, at some point, used to get sick, and then he used to sit next to him and throw up in his arbel, in his thing, until it got full. And the guy was like, "I forget, I'm out of here." But Chaim Shal is the Hoib in the Eden. There's no Shaila, it's the big Chassid. But he once said he used to go through with dirt on his clothes. He said that has a Ravav big day. It's a big thing. You're not allowed to go to Marsa Shabbos. It says Ein Ravav. Ein Ravav. If you have one Ravav, you have to go full. This is a certain truah.
For what he was,
for where they lived and what they were. That was the emes. That was the Oivim. That was the Oivim then.
I mean, you're skipping. I don't know if it's Bekavana. You're skipping over the obvious example, and that's the whole thing of for Kelishklach.
Yeah, no, 100%.
No, because over there, the Rebbe clearly came out and said, "Don't drink."
Correct.
And by and large, everyone said, "That's one thing we're not makabel."
Exactly. What's Strat?
It's taka crazy.
It's crazy because Chabad culture is so strong.
Right.
It's so strong. It's for hundreds of years. You understand? Right. It's not that it didn't come out of nowhere.
Right, of course not.
And even present like Chassidim should look.
No, like you're a bacher in yeshiva and you want to fabring. If you're a serious bacher, you want to fabring, you want to feel something. You see the Alter Chassid, the way he got somewhere was getting a little bit shaker.
Right. And he's 35 and he's not.
No, but I'm saying even the older Chassid who's 60, right? Who's putter from this Xer, right? But like you see this and he's doing it and you're like, okay, so I'm going to wait till I'm 40. I'm going to be, who even knows I'm going to be from at 40?
Exactly.
And that's I'm saying that tension is so clear.
100%. It's all over.
Because how else do you explain that what would seem to be the obvious and easiest Xer, and by the way, the only Xer I think that they ever made.
Yeah, very simple.
And very easy to follow, and very delineated. Like it's not.
And you have to think, why did they make a Xer of this? Because he knew this is like one thing that's very hard for people.
Well, I think there were stories of.
No, I'm saying why a Xer? What can suggest? It's not a suggestion. You have to make a Xer, and even that people.
And nobody listened. Nobody listened.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. So I think what so going back to this shliach and Eved difference is that ultimately it's not so clear cut because before Chassidim were Chassidim, they weren't avadim, right?
Yeah. No, I'm saying,
but I understand what you're saying about the shliach thing. It went from Eved Hashem to shliach. To me, that the way to understand that is simply. Or the word that comes to mind when you talk about that, and it came to mind when you mentioned it, is trust. Is trust, because what really differentiates an eved from a shliach? Nobody trusts me. You trust your eved.
You trust the shliach. Yeah.
You trust your eved. You don't really trust your eved. You don't trust your eved, right? And there's an eved neman and an eved pashat, but you don't really trust your eved. And if you trust him, it's only in the fact that he won't steal from you, but not to represent you. A shliach you trust for serious matters, right? And I think that is something, and it ties back a little bit before. How do you not get too complacent?
Right.
There is a sense that you talk about Chabad culture, and by Chabad culture, I think also to clarify, you're not talking about just the way Lubavitch is dressed or the slang. You're talking about deep culture,
Russian culture things. Yeah.
Deep culture. The idea that a chassid would trust himself is ungefragt. It's ungefragt. What do you mean? It's the bigger the question, the more obvious you have to go ask the Rebbe, right? And that continued through Dor Hashvii.
Yeah.
A lot of times it seems to the Rebbe's chagrin, figure it out. Stop asking me every single detail.
Many times.
Right, but that culture continued.
Yeah.
And there's a reason to it, because at the end of the day, I'm forgetting the lashon now, but you can't sof kol sof a person. That a person always. You're biased, but also a kol b'sham tchasav. You have self-love. You're biased towards yourself.
Correct.
By definition. And so I think there's just a feeling of I don't think the typical chassid trusts himself nearly as much as the Rebbe trusted him.
I agree with you.
But there's a reason for it. I don't think it's just pashut. I don't think it's just silliness or laziness.
Oh, I agree. It's a culture thing. It's also the word bittul is like misused and misunderstood. And instead of bittul was understood, or the way it was conceptualized is like ich bin agarnished. I'm nothing. I'm nothing. And there once told Chaim Shalom Deitch, but actually there was said in Fabrengen also that Mi Ani Amani is the biggest clip of this generation.
Mamish.
Yeah. That Rebbe Mi Ani. Rebbe. This is the biggest clipper.
Right.
The biggest clipper is that people say, I'm garnished. Because so nothing amounts for you from your life. Because I'm nothing. So what do you want from me?
Right.
And the Rebbe is saying, what do you mean garnished? Like the Rebbe told him, Zusha, Zainas Gala. I believe that you can be the greatest person in the world. For you, in your potential. You can be the greatest you. You don't believe in it.
Yeah.
Believe in it.
Right.
Trust yourself. Believe in it.
Right.
Again, it's very negating. Again, the tension, because if you say, because to the ego, and you get so I say there's this check and balance system where you can say, but the trusting of the self is essential.
So it boils down ultimately to a mashpia. That's what it boils down to. Meaning it boils down to having
a real mashpia. So that's why the Rebbe made us shliach. It's like part of parcel of the Rebbe's oir that he's entrusting you. He says, okay, I say l'charav.
Right.
Like, okay, so if you really have an issue, so have someone that you can able to schmooze through and talk over and so on.
It brings you back to the Alter Rebbe right away, the Akdam of Tanya also.
Correct. Yeah, exactly.
They felt that Chassidim could be trusted with each other.
Correct. As much as they can trust themselves, as much as they can trust with them. So it's an empowering thing.
Right. Right. I mean, if I'm going to be honest, I felt, when I was a bacher, for sure I had a mashpia.
Yeah.
But so often the mashpia was just like someone who told you what the Rebbe would say and whatever. And with time, it began to feel like, okay, this is, I could go through the motions of calling a mashpia. Right. I could if it's a skula, I could do it. If it's a skula, but I don't really care so much for the school of it, so I don't do it.
Right.
And I'm not. It's not anybody else's fault. I'm not trying to deflect to someone else. But I feel like you're right that for it to work, you need a mashpia. But for the mashpia to work, they have to have the other side, correct. which is
they have to own it.
The goal is not to. The goal is not to deflect on the hard questions and to play it safe, correct. On the hard questions, right? Ultimately, we are. Ultimately, the time that we live in now is one where in many ways there are no more illusions, right? Because it's interesting what you said before, that people are only beginning to understand what the Rebbe was saying, right? Meaning to say, if I understand correctly, that back in the day when the Rebbe was saying it, they didn't understand what the Rebbe was saying. They didn't even begin to understand what the Rebbe was saying.
On their level, yeah.
Right, right. And you're not the first person who has made that kind of expression, right? A lot of people say, we only understand now what the Rebbe meant when he said X, Y, and Z. Now,
the Gemara says it also, right?
Right. That's something that also I don't understand. The Gemara says it takes 40 years to understand the Rebbe. That's talking about a regular Rav and Talmud. Then we've said that a Rebbe and Chassid is a whole nother level of this, and somehow it takes us 40 seconds.
Exactly.
How?
Yeah, split second, exactly.
How does it, how is there no, a regular Rav and Talmud takes 40 years.
Right.
You've said that the Rebbe is much bigger than a regular Rav and that you're smaller than a regular Talmud, and yet the 40 years has somehow collapsed.
Correct.
It should be way more than 40 years, right? And so what you were saying was, or what came out from what you were saying is that back in the day, the Rebbe was saying things, and people by definition, because we're not at that level, people were not understanding fully or even beginning to understand what the Rebbe was really talking about, right? But there was an illusion that they were. There was an illusion that they were, because the Rebbe says, the Rebbe haste, you do. And you think that you're walking in lockstep and everything, there's no lag, and you're totally current with what the Rebbe's thinking right now, right? You're totally current. Today, nobody has that illusion anymore. Nobody thinks that the way to be a current chassid is to be up to date with the latest sikha and the latest gossip and the latest
there's external trappings that allow people to believe that.
Back then, there's a lot of noise.
A lot of noise, yes.
A lot of noise, and maybe it's the best noise ever.
Right, the best in the history, but it's noise. Yeah.
But we're human beings, and if it also comes back to just pure, honest math. Right, you say that the Rebbe is this massive Talmud Chacham. He's a massive person. He's talking a few hours on Shabbos, right? like, how is it possible that you can be current with all of that? The math just doesn't add up.
Right.
And yet, there's this feeling of like those days you were current, and today you're not current.
I agree.
Right.
And I think today you're more current than then.
Well, you have more of a chance being current because at least you know that you're not current.
Correct. That's correct. Correct. At least you don't know, and then you can be opening yourself up to what you should be knowing.
Right.
You have the humility to say, okay, because then you're busy. You're busy. In the those years.
Right.
What was a Chassidish Bacher, and not some version of a Chassidish Bacher. Obviously, a Chassidish Bacher still learns, but let's say the guy does not learn. It's like a mimish guy. He's running. The Rebbe came. They could go, and he's doing like he's really in the zone.
Right.
He's actually a pustakeli, but no one knows that. You know what I'm saying? Like,
what was the sense back then? Because what was the sense back then? Did people really? What was there a tension back then? Do you remember?
Yes, there was a huge tension.
There was.
Yeah, very big. Because the very serious guys sat and learned. And they were considered Chassidish Bacher, but to be really Chassidish Bacher, you had to waste a lot of time. So there was always that tension. Yes.
So because this is something that I've always been really curious about. I didn't realize that you were. I thought you were a little bit younger, but if you're already 20 by Tov Nun.
Yeah.
So you were a proper teenager in the mems.
Yeah, sure.
So when the story with Hey Tavis happened.
Yeah.
And the famous story, which to me almost encapsulates the whole thing that you're talking about. Yes, when you were watching the Rebbe.
I was actually yes, yeah.
Yeah. So explain to me.
It's bizarre, by the way. I thought yes.
What was bizarre?
I'm not gonna say who I was standing with, but today they're big crazy Chassidim, and I remember I was standing with two of my friends, and they're talking Chassidim a lot, and it was just there was a sense that you should really leave. Like, what do you...
Wait, tell the story, though. Tell the story properly.
Oh, you talking about the Rebbe came out and started screaming?
Yeah, but tell me, I just know... I didn't say the story now, and I wasn't there. So
okay, what I remember, this is what I remember.
Sure.
The Rebbe was coming out, I think he was going to the oil, and...
this is after Hey Tavis?
After Hey Tavis,
A few days after Hey Tavis.
Yeah. And... I have a vivid memory of the Rebbe scream. I can see it right now. Like, it's clear to me.
You were waiting for the Rebbe to come out?
I was standing 30 feet away from the Rebbe.
No, but what were you doing there?
So we're standing...
Everybody's waiting for the Rebbe to come out?
Yeah. What do you mean?
Okay.
That's what the...
The Rebbe's going to the oil, and we're waiting for the Rebbe to come out.
The mikveh, but he was going out. It was like an early afternoon. And we were standing there. Again, I don't remember the exact dates. This is all verifiable somewhere. And I was standing there.
That's for a different podcast.
Exactly. This is not my sugya. And I was standing there, and the Rebbe came out. And they started screaming, like. At first, everyone ran to the Rebbe because they thought the Rebbe was saying a sicha. Because the Rebbe, there was not. And I remember, we were mamish 5 feet away from the Rebbe, and I heard the Rebbe say "fegelach and bosom." This I remember that was screaming "cooked there fegelach and bosom," something like that.
What did he mean by that?
Like, what are you looking at? Like, what are you draining, doing nothing? And then I was like, "This is not a sicha, by the way. This is not." But no one really knew what to do. So the first moment, everyone was just
total shock.
Total shock. Huh. There was a guy. No, but he passed away. I forgot his name. There was a guy Cohen. He used to stand right when the Rebbe came out. It was like an older bacher, and he just stood there like this, like a gelam, very quietly. So it looked like maybe it was normal. Like that was the scene almost looked normal. Then people started on the chapping so everyone started dispersing, but the Rebbe was still screaming. So what do you do?
Right, you can't leave him to talk to you can't ignore him.
You can't ignore him, but he's saying basically, leave, go learn. What are you wasting time looking at people? Right. Go do something productive with your life. But it was a shtickle tension, because if you hide, and there was still screaming. By the way, there was it was a ruch screaming also. It was not but he was pointing fingers. It was a very serious thing. And I remember standing where I moved maybe to the library, that far. But I remember standing behind the rock, and a few guys were with me said, "No, you have to lift up your head. You have to, because the Rebbe was screaming at you. You have to makabel it." And it didn't feel right. But we stood up.
So he pointed at you?
He was looking at us, and with both hands, not like this. It was harf. It was oh, you know.
But 1 second, watching the Rebbe go to the oil was midi and b'yeme.
Yeah.
So why mitamal?
First of all, it was after people singing the whole night and getting drunk. It was a culmination of this.
So why mitamal this time?
No, because there was a lot of drengzich. The Bachen kept. Usually when there was 3-4 guys, 10 guys. This was like every day, hundreds of bachrim standing there. No one to yeshiva.
This was a Yetzimah club.
Yeah, this was a Yetzimah club.
That so many people should be there.
Yeah. This and also the whole Torah. I was an old Torah then. So there was no young bachrim then.
Right.
That was not. That was. But this is just. I think the Rebbe always felt this way. In my opinion.
Yeah, it makes
of course,
sense.
It's a shayla. First of all,
what are you guys doing?
Yeah, what are you doing?
You're not becoming a bigger chassid by
correct. No, I don't think so.
But to be fair to those people, if I was living in that time, I could see why they would feel that you would.
You know, it's funny you're saying
you could feel like you're missing the boat if you're not.
You see, you're thinking like now, when you were when we were around, the Rebbe was. We said there every day. And no one Bechal thought Gimel Tammuz.
No, I don't mean by Gimel Tammuz. No, there was available to you. He's available to see. So you want to go see
when it's Bekovidik, it's
right. No, in other words, to be a bacher in those days, I'm sitting with my Gemara.
Yeah.
And a few of my friends go out of 770.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody lived in 770 those days.
Yeah, anyway. Very few people. But we're talking about, from my experience.
Like, I'm sitting in Zal, like, carving on a Gemara. My friends go see the Rebbe. No, I'm learning a Gemara. What, do you think your Gemara is better than
okay, so that's 5 minutes. I'm talking about you from all the time. That was like a whole trek. You have to leave in a half hour.
No, but I could see why people would. I could see why people would think that. Like, ultimately, there's, and those, meaning I think you have to be fair, even though I wasn't around then. Yeah. But I'm just guessing that in those days to be both, like, to commit yourself to learning Gemara when there's something so much bigger than you, just right there next to you.
Yeah, it was hard.
You need to really trust yourself.
Yeah. I remember Salfim used to say that Dir B'Tachtonim is in Ashtik Gemara.
And?
That was his line. You talk about Dir B'Tachtonim, what are you going to go put on
and what did you all think about that?
The guys that were serious. I just want to tell you, like, in retrospect, the guys that learned, it's Nicker.
It's Nicker.
Yeah, it's Nicker. Unfortunately, it's Nicker. I remember there was a guy. I'm not going to say his name, but he's today a very, very wealthy kid, a very wealthy guy. And I remember he was a smart kid. I remember he used to tell me, "Why are you learning? What you can learn nothing about that. What are you going to learn? Even Chassidus, what are you learning?
Right.
Go do Mitzvah, go do everything." Right. And I told him, "Listen, if you're not going to learn, you're not going to. It's nothing. Your whole Yiddish, the whole Chassidus, it's nothing."
That's what you said then.
I told him then, and I hope he doesn't know who this is because I may give the Remas. And a few years later, like, he was out of the system.
Out of the system.
Out of the system. Like, he just left the whole system. I'm not saying he was not so from, but he was not so from for many years. He left everything, and he was a ganze Chassidish bacher. And now I met him recently. Now he's ready. He's returned. He doesn't have a full beard, but he's like already. And now he says, "How come I didn't learn?"
Right.
Yeah. Like, why didn't I learn? How come no one told me to learn? I'm like, I actually had this conversation with you 30 years ago.
Yeah, but it's not fair for him. Like, it's not fair to place responsibility on you.
No, I know.
Another bacher.
Yeah, no. He's not saying. He's saying
the reason he didn't learn is because the culture was
I agree.
Not.
It was a certain type of culture. Yeah.
The culture was not.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very interesting way of looking at it. I mean, because also in the past they used to say that Lubavitch, people in Lubavitch were Pashtidim because the driest sand is like the driest part of the world is the beach, right? Because the water sucks up all the chluchas out of the sand. Wow. And then mitamol, the spitz was to be
Dafka dry.
Well, that's not how anybody saw themselves. They saw themselves as full of lachluchas, verkehrt. But by definition, almost when you are too caught up in the Rebbe's kind of path and journey, your journey ends up being less. And I think it would be interesting, maybe with someone else, a different conversation to really unpack what happened in the mems and the whole where did this whole spitz come from? I think it makes. I don't think it's so ridiculous when you think about it. But I mean, I think at least I could say that if I was there, it probably would be the same way.
Listen, doing that is better than going to to bars.
Yeah, that bar is so low. I mean,
No, it's not true because a lot of these guys that held them on to Yiddishkeit. They had a lot of passion and a lot of
but
energy.
there were a lot of serious guys who felt that they could have been big.
Right, they could have maybe, but
I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, that you have to trust yourself is in a way something that the Rebbe expected from Chassidim to trust themselves and to be something that only they could be, and it's not as simple as that sounds. It in a way is that even a bigger onus on the person.
100% bigger responsibility. 100% greatness. Most people would rather live mediocrity.
Right.
It's easier to live a mediocre life. If I tell you are the most important person in the world, oh my, what do you mean I can't do anything? Like I have to, like the whole world, like the kolam shakel.
Right.
These are big words, but they're actually really
right. But that's
this and wanted us to live this way.
Right. That's what the Gemara says. That an Eved actually doesn't want freedom.
Exactly.
You'd rather be an Eved because life is easier when you're told what to do and everything comes your way.
Correct. It's easier to be mediocre. It's very hard to be great. We talk about the Aselach Harav. There's a Chassidish Taich. Aselach Harav means Istalak Manasafik. Aselach Harav, Istalak Manasafik.
Right.
So the Chassidish Pshat is Aselach Harav, make yourself great, and then you won't have any sneakers.
Aselach Harav.
Aselach Harav. Become big. You could be big.
Right.
And if you can be big, you're gonna live without doubts, without uncertainties, and be clarity.
Right.
Chassidus wants this. Chassidus wants you should be big people, reiche people.
Right. Ultimately, it's a matter of trust, because when you trust the system or you trust someone else, the future is bright. Right. The future is bright.
Trust is a very good. They once asked someone. I think it was a kid. I forgot what. Maybe a Baumgarten once asked Rebbe Tzachana. He brought a. You know the story?
No.
He brought the bakery of food, whatever. Somebody brought some of the food to the Rebbe Tzachana, and Rebbe Tzachana wanted to give him like a coin, like $1 or something. He says no, he doesn't want it. But so she said, "What do you want?" He says, "I want to ask if you can ask the Rebbe one thing." He says, "Ask the Rebbe what is his favorite tefillah."
Tefillah.
Yeah. Well, what's his favorite? What's the main part of davening? Rebbe Tzachana says, "It's a good shayla. I don't know. I'm gonna ask him."
Right.
So the next day he came back and the Rebbe told the Rebbe Tzachana told the boy that the Rebbe's favorite piece of davening is Moedani.
Wow.
And by then the Kunsiyan Chassidus is based on Moedani.
Right.
So Moedani. What is Moedani? Shchazatim nishmasi. Rabbi Munasacha means great is your faith in me.
Right.
The first thing that you wake up in the morning, I say, thank you Hashem for believing in me. Because if you don't believe in yourself, Hashem believes in you. But if you don't believe in yourself, you're not going to amount to anything. So you have to have trust. You have to have Rabbi Munasacha. You have to believe. If the Eibusher believes in you, you have to believe in yourself.
Well, it's not even that you believe in yourself. You believe that the Eibusher believes in you.
Correct. Therefore, you believe in yourself.
Right.
I say, I have koiches.
Right.
I don't have koiches because the Eibusher believes in me. The Eibusher gave me a neshama, gives me a chazat b'nishmasi, gave me my neshama, believes in me, created me, gives me all these talents. So, Rabbi Munasacha, great is your faith in me. Therefore, I have Rabbi Munasacha. I have faith in you. Right. I have faith in you, and you have faith in me.
Right.
This is the foundation. This is the yisoid.
Yeah. Look. Ultimately, I don't think there's a choice, because the alternative is Avdos, and of any time in history that is not going to work. It's this time. It's this time, and it would also be a very sad way to live anyway. But I just don't think it would work.
It doesn't work, and it's not going to work, and it's depressing, and it's
right.
It doesn't work.
No, but
it's not working.
In a time of history where people have, at least from Yidden, have unprecedented choices available to them.
Correct.
Unprecedented. They don't have to be from Yid. If they want to be from Yid, there are other ways of Avodas Hashem. There are all kinds of things in front of them.
Correct.
And what I'm going to pitch to you is, let's be sad, or let's be depressed, or let's get our pants muddy like they did in Lubavitch. I don't see how it sticks. And the good news is, from what you're saying, and it's a beautiful message, is that ultimately it's all there. There's there's a Dover Shalom here. There's a beautiful thing here.
Correct.
It's not a Haktazach.
Not Zachtazach.
It's not a
depressing thing.
It's not a B'diyevidik.
No, it's not B'diyevid. It's Chatchila. Everything's the Chatchila. Hashem has a plan. There's Ashkacha Pratis.
Right.
There was an oil that came down to this world, chop the oil and reach the highest madrega. Be your best self, the best possible self.
Right.
And you'll live a good life.
Right.
A holy life, and a good life, and a committed life, and a chassidish life, and a kushnik life, all these things.
Right.
But in a place of expansion and openness and elation.
Right. And hope. And
hope. Exactly. And kivui, and kisufim, all of that.
And hope.
Yeah.
All right, this has been wonderful. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. The music for this podcast comes from the album Repentance Doors by Oren Sor Nadav Vachar and is used with their permission.